care because they care.
KCAA. Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Andrea Rodeman. This week, like every week, we'll be discussing critical legal and social justice issues that are impacting our community. Today, our subject is America's fear of black success. Success, is there a lawmaker and legal conspiracy? I think that I'm going to begin, I guess we should, first of all, define what success is, right? And, when I think about success, I'm thinking about obviously a lot of issues and a lot of different things when it comes to success. And success being obviously success is as a degree of is very subjective. What different people are obviously going to define success in a different way. But I think that anything that is going to, for the purposes of what we're talking about today, I think a lot of it is primarily what I would define as a independence. Independence. I think that's the main thing. Anything that we can do that's going to allow us any degree of independence is I think people are fearful of that. I think people do not want that type of independence or see us to have some degree of independence. I think that it's and when I talk about that, I'm not obviously talking about that in just a blanket way. I know I'm using a blanket statement when I'm talking about the issue of success. And when I say America, I guess the question is, who am I speaking of? And I think for me, the best way to begin by trying to explain it, I think that really, harnesses the way in which many of us see. This is kind of what happens when we get into these types of discussions. I think that people see any type of discussion like this as a more of a conspiracy baiting type of discussion, where it says, well, so now, what is the likelihood that all of these people come together and collectively have this agenda to look at African Americans and somehow, some way say, we're just going to look at you and we're going to go out our way to make sure that you're not successful, right? Mm-hmm. And, on the surface, I can see how there may be people who may, see it that way. Mm-hmm. But I think that what we have to understand when it comes to the issue of the idea of fear of our success and our independence is, we have to begin to look at how there has been a systematic, continuously in a systematic way of people of color who, and it's not money, right? Because you can there's some people that can be controlled by money. So in other words, you have individuals who are very wealthy but are very, stifled in the way in which they can do certain things just simply because they're fearful of losing what they have already, gained by making certain individuals, upset or mad at them. And specifically, it's like staying in your lane and not being able to, I guess to a certain degree, it's just like something that, you hear people make jokes about it, about the fact that you could be rich, but someone may not want to be in your shoes just simply because, the color of your skin, if you happen to be an African American. Which I disagree with that. So, I think that the fear of independence is something that I see on a personal level on a daily basis. And I see it, from people that I represent, and I put the law and the legal system, lawmakers and the legal system in there because that's where it oftentimes play its way out. And when you look at, I mean, let's just think about think about the consequences of going back to what happened. When we look at the Nick Cannon situation, when we look at the Bill Cosby situation, when we look at many of these situations that come about. And this is the thing about the Bill Cosby situation, because I know that people are going to go a different place with that, because they're going to say, hey, he already did it. We know he did it. He did all these things. But, I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, the reason why it was overturned was clearly because the way that in which he was prosecuted was done, illegally. And the prosecutor, who clearly anyone that would have been had any real understanding of the law would have known that the evidence and the information that they used against Bill Cosby was problematic and violated his due process, right? And it was inadmissible.
Yeah.
But they were willing to use what was clearly inadmissible evidence. The prosecutor and the judge were willing to use clearly evidence that was not admissible in order to convict him, because that's how bad they wanted to do it.
Correct.
You see what I'm saying? So I think that that's why that's why it's relevant when we talk about Bill Cosby. So again, what it boils down to is that degree of independence, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about what happened in Tennessee. So there's two representatives, one Justin Jones, one Justin Pearson, two Democrats who were recently expelled from the Tennessee legislature over their participation in the gun control process. However, they have been recently reinstated to their seats. Jones was reinstated by the Nashville Metropolitan Council on Monday, and I believe Pearson was reinstated sometimes, I think, midweek, and it was all unanimous, right? So what happened was that during their Jones and Pearson's it followed their expulsions from the legislature, which kind of became a focal point because they were actually involved in protest on the, I guess, on the legislative floor, based on their people protesting about the gun control, the shootings, and people are really upset about implementing new legislation to address the issue of this gun violence, this explosion of gun violence that we're having in our country, and we're continuously having that. And actually, there was three people. There was Justin Jones, who I think Jones is he represents Nashville. Pearson represents Memphis. And then there was another female, Gloria Johnson, who was of Knoxville. Those three were participated. Jones and Pearson were black. Johnson was white. They all were involved in the same. Their roles were the same.
Yeah.
Nobody was really less disruptive, but they were both disruptive, which they allege violated some sort of decorum rules of the legislature. But nevertheless, they only expelled Jones and Pearson.
Mm-hmm.
They did not expel Johnson, for the same act. And the only reason that didn't happen was clearly because of race.
Correct.
Now, one of the things that happened prior to the expulsion vote that was interesting was the way in which they spoke to those young men about what happened. It was like a lynching. It's like, let me put you in your place, boy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because, they are two young African-American men who are very vocal, who don't back down, and, they possess a degree of power and independence that oftentimes people are threatened by.
Mm-hmm.
They're a threat because of them being, into politics and the fact that they are free to speak their mind. And they expected the response that was given by both Pearson and Jones was not expected.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they wanted them to apologize
Yeah.
for what they did and say, I messed up now. This is what happens to you, boy, when you step out of your place.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't act that way. And I think that when you saw what was displayed at that time, after, they were, I think it was a speaker, one of and I can't think of his name. Is it Sexton? I can't remember, who was trying to, go at him and try to say that you should have done this and you should have done that. And boy,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't use the word boy, but he should have, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that exemplified really the way things are. Although we're talking about Tennessee, I'm from Tennessee. And although I'm living in California now, I can tell you that it's not much different. Although we want to believe that because we live in a liberal state of California and some of these other liberals, liberals are, in many ways, especially the moderates, so-called moderates, they're the same thing. They're the same way.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? I mean, there's not too much of a difference oftentimes when it comes to the way in which people are treated, and the way in which that you can see that fear. And it's a real thing, you know what I mean? The fear that people have of the success and power is exemplified in all facets of American life.
Mm-hmm.
And any time that they feel like that you're making some sort of headway, then they have problems with you,
Mm-hmm.
and they do go out of their way to make things more difficult for you. I can say that I'm going to give you. There was a case that I was dealing with in a court case where there was a client that had significant property, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the client happened to have been African American. It was a divorce case. Well, he was. They go into this inquiry. The judge goes into this inquiry about how he was able to obtain so much property.
Mm.
Huh? Then ultimately made a ruling that took his property that was arguably his separate property and sanctioned him and made all of his property community property.
Wow.
Huh?
Mm.
You see what I mean? This happens all the time. You know what I mean? They want to, you know what I mean? It's like how they used to do, they castrate you. They always try to figure out a way they can castrate you.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? And so, the reason why I know it to be true, because I see it play out in real time in courtrooms every day, where I see that powerful black men are oftentimes treated differently than stepping and fetching black men.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? And because they want you to, and that goes along with that. We seem to see before, when it was much easier, right,
Mm-hmm.
to control people. Now it's done in a different way, where there is this mad dash to try to make strong black men look weak,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was in court one time where against a very, I'm not going to use the word aggressive because she wasn't really aggressive, but a very loudmouth opposing counsel who happened to be a white female. right? Well, anybody that knows me knows that I'm a very aggressive dude. You see what I mean? I mean, you're not just going to talk to me any old kind of way, and I'm just going to sit there and let you talk to me any old kind of way. And that's just the way that I am. So we took a break, and we came back, and she had the audacity to put on the record that she felt intimidated, and she wanted a deputy to escort her when she came out of the courtroom.
Oh,
Huh?
what?
You see what I'm saying? So see, that's another thing, is that you have this whole element of it's playing a different way, but now that we live in the Me Too movement is one thing, but it often plays in a certain way when it comes to African Americans, because now what happens is when you have of females who happen to be not African American, who all of a sudden say that they are intimidated by black men, and now we do have a very large number of women now in who are attorneys, who are judges, who are prosecutors, who play that game. You know what I mean? When it comes to, you want to be in the position, but then you're a damsel in distress when you're in the trenches. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so now a lot of men are castrated and emasculated to where if they move in certain circles, they have to act like, are they going to be intimidated? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you have men, regardless of their sexual persuasion, acting very unmanly, right? To move a certain way. You see what I mean? So the reality of it, when I talk about success, when I talk about fearful of success, I'm talking about, that's the independence that I'm talking about. You see what I mean?
Gotcha.
They want to do whatever they can to try to make sure that you're not that they don't want you to be a man. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, and that has been a huge struggle for many years. It's like the unspoken rule when it comes to men and the way that they move. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, I like to check people sometimes when they allow that to sometimes, not allow them to acquire the things that they want. Sometimes it can go overboard. Sometimes you do have to pick and choose your battles, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you look at the history of what's happened in this country, and you look at, like, during the civil rights movement, I always remember a very common sign that you would see is a man carrying a sign that says, "I am a man." You see what I mean? And which has played out, which in many ways has, in a psychotic way, born aggression where it would not normally take place. You see what I mean? And so what I mean by that is that, you ever see a movie called The Burning Bed? The Burning Bed was a true story and it was, the star of it was a actress by the name of Farrah Fawcett. And I don't know if anybody remember Farrah Fawcett, but she starred in a movie called Charlie's Angels. And back in the 70s and 80s, she was like a very popular female actress. And in this movie, it was a true story. It was about a woman who had been abused so much that one night she got up and she burned her husband in bed. She just lit him up, right? You know what I mean? Because she was tired of the abuse.
Correct.
You see what I mean? So the point that I'm trying to make is that a lot of the aggression that you see is a result of that type of abuse. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like when someone it's just like when a kid comes in that would normally not be the type of kid that's going to come in and just start blasting people, might come in one day and blast people. Because that aggression that you feel when someone is, doing these things to you, right, is you explode. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so and I'm just using that as an analogy because I'm definitely not trying to justify someone who would come into a school and shoot a bunch of people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm using that there are cases like you remember we used to use the word postal. You know, everybody say you went and everybody would go postal at work. And that at some point you hit that burning, you hit that nerve. And that's what's happened. That's why you see a lot of it's not like the commonality among black people in America is more of a common experience and less of DNA. So in other words, the way that all of us, let's just that's kind of the code. That's the more of what we have in common. The one thing that because look, color is 110% social construct. It has just because Africa is a continent, and I've said this a million times. People in different parts of they're not the same people. Exactly. They just happen to be the same color. They've ingrained in our head that everything that looks like us are exactly this. We got the exact same DNA. Exactly. And we don't. What makes us common? We've developed our own culture in this country, but it's because of a shared experience.
Exactly.
And the shared experience that we have is that on a daily basis, like we could spend. I might not know who you are, and we could be put in a situation where we could sit down and we could speak to each other, and I could say something to you that only you would understand. Yep. Right? Nobody else would have. We could sit at a table and I could say, "Hey, man, they don't want us to have nothing." Now, for somebody else, that seems far fetched.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking? Explain this to me. What are you talking about? But you're gonna look at me and just say, "I know." Yeah. They don't want us to have nothing.
Correct.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I could say, man, I'm so sick and tired of going on the job every day and code switching. Well, some people might not know what I mean by code switching, but you know what I mean by code switching. When it comes to you put in certain situations, we walk into the courtroom, and I'm talking about and I'm looking at you and I'm calling you Mister and I'm calling you by your last name and we're speaking a certain way, right? And then we walk out of the courtroom and we're like, well, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we have to code switch because we know how they get down. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And so there's certain things, so that commonality that we feel, but the one thing that we do have in common when we say, I texted a client the other day, he was really upset, and I said in the text, I emailed him and I said, man, they don't want us to have anything. He says, yeah, I know they don't. He knew what I was talking about.
Exactly what you're talking about.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's because of that shared experience. You see that, and that jealousy that you see, it's not hate, it's jealousy. Yeah. It is just absolute 110% jealousy that they have. Because the thing is that basically there's nothing that I envy about anyone else that doesn't look like me. At all. Because I think on the other hand, you have to look at it from this perspective. We tend to, there's a lot of blame that goes around when it comes to us, right? When it comes to the issue of how we treat each other and how we feel about each other. And that frustration, we're low-hanging fruit sometimes for both. We're low-hanging fruit for the masses that don't look at us, and we're also low-hanging fruit for people in our own community. to you know to kind of like act out on this psychosis of where we've in a situation. So it's like I'm frustrated and I'm mad and I'm in the house and I take a lamp and I break a lamp in my house, or I tear a table up in my house, or I put a hole in the wall, right? And someone said something to me one day that made a lot of sense, but he said, "Well, what did you want me to do? You want me to go next door and tear up their stuff?" You see what I'm saying? It's just like rioting. What I'm saying? Like, you go over and saying, yeah, can I come in your house real quick, man, and break a couple lamps or something, man? Me and my old lady are into it right now, right?
Yeah.
You break things in your house. And a lot of times we act out in our communities because I think there's some degree of psychosis that we're dealing with, where we're really upset with the way that the masses are in every possible way trying to not allow us to be independent, right? You could have an entire class on the history of how the masses stopped communities that were black from thriving.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, there's more than one Black Wall Street. Yeah. There's a bunch of them.
A bunch of them.
And so how is it that there is a system of thriving black communities in the history beginning, the Tulsa issue happened in 1921, but there was those before it and there were many after it in different places where they were thriving, they had businesses, they were doing well, crime was low, things were going well, and then all of a sudden they bombed it and literally killed people, in a way in which it was like a Holocaust. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They go in and they just kill people, burn their buildings, take away their livelihood, and destroy entire communities that happen to be black. And the people that are doing it are people that are, and the government were involved in it, right? You're not making this up. When you go to, it's like if you go to someone and the thing that really, they try to make you seem like you are psychotic. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you sit up there and you say, hey, you know what, man, I have stories every day from going into court where I see that these judges are jealous of black lawyers. You see prosecutors who are jealous. You see opposing counsels. They're jealous of you. They are absolutely 110% jealous of you, right? That you're able, in light of all of the things that they put you through and treat you differently, that you still walk out and you think that you're better than me. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I could tell you some crazy stories that you just would not believe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
About things that happened to me, things that happened to my clients, things that happened to my friends. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Things that just happened, like, for example, just happened in this, to these 3 legislators.
Yeah.
It was so obvious.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And so, and how they allowed them to deal with that. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that there's ways that I don't think that it's clearly not time to give up. I think I admire them the way that they responded to it. You see what I mean? That they did it in a way in which they held their dignity. They didn't show fear, and they were real gangster with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's what shook them at their core.
Yeah.
And that's what shook them at their core in terms of how they responded to it.
Right.
Like you said, if they would have came something totally different, if they would have played their role, yes, put on that different coat and
Right.
lowered their pride or whatever you want to call it and say, yes, sir, we apologize, this and that. It might have would have came out different. But it was blatant, it was clear. The racism was clear. It was clear cut. I mean, you expelled two, but you let another one
Right.
go. That's totally different complexion. So I mean, it was clear cut, but just the way that they presented themselves and held their ground
Right.
and spoke truth, because we know the overall thing was a sham.
Yeah. Right.
But the fact that they stood their ground was the thing that was most threatening to them.
Right. Most
Their
definitely.
independence.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It was definitely, yeah, and that's exact. The fact that their response to what they were doing, like, we're gonna show you, we're gonna beat you until you say Toby.
Yeah.
That's kind of way that they did that. You know what I mean? So, what you think, Rose? I'm gonna get you in here because you have something on your mind.
Yeah, I was just thinking back to you talking about masculinity. It's really sad to see that in our generation, masculinity in itself is seen as toxic. And that, I think, is the root of a lot of things that we have happening nowadays in terms of, just shootings and things that are happening, men not being able to meet men because, like you said, in a way, the feminist movement has emasculated these men, because we as women cannot be in our feminine, because being in our feminine is weak.
Right.
So, yeah, I just talking about that whole aspect of masculinity and how, being masculine in itself is seen as toxic in this country. I think it's something that also connects to people of color and our races, and the fact that, men of color are seen as threatening because they live in their masculine, because they go out there and get the bread, because they go out there and work hard, because they're not behind a screen playing video games per se.
Yeah. And it's like something's wrong with that. It's
Yeah.
wrong. I mean, I don't know about the video game thing, but but as far as being in a situation where as a being a man, like you're always being checked, and now we've gone to this whole thing where it's like we have to be, weak. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like it's crazy. I remember talking to this. It was on a college campus, and I was talking to this one professor, and he was telling me about how, and it was years ago, and he started talking about how they try to, on that particular campus, how men who happen to be, they kind of like, I don't want to use the word, but they kind of, kind of not, they were very cold to people who acted like a man. The more masculine you acted, the more you were kind of, put to the side.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like the more you acted, more, less than that, then they kind of took you in. You know what I mean? And so they make it seem like it's a bad thing when we act that way. And again, that's some degree of independent. Someone can say, I don't know anyone that's going to come in and just say, well, I act feminine, and so what are you saying? You trying to mess with me because I'm acting feminine. But I am saying that no matter whatever your independence is, and if you happen to, I feel like there is a concerted effort to make sure that that independence is not experienced and doesn't give you that type of empowerment, and it bothers them when you have that degree of independence. And when I talk about that, just think, again, it has nothing to do with money either.
Yeah.
It's just that just you being an independent person and not be willing to, take and they really it plays its way out in the criminal justice system in such a crazy way, and the numbers are so obvious that it's hard for me to fathom how anybody can question how they play this thing out. It's almost it's crazy. How they really cannot stand you to be an independent person, and it's so blatant, man.
Yeah.
And when I look back and I think about the history of what we were doing as people, and we think about all the different movements that have been been successful, and what I consider to be successful, and I think that probably one of the most underrated movements was the movement that was started by Elijah Muhammad. My personal opinion, because what he said is, of course, his theocracy was wrong, but he did say, "I did not come to teach you the religion. I came to clean you up." And that value and cleaning up and pride that you put in someone, if you take that was such a valuable movement that they really attacked. It was highly infiltrated. You know what I mean, by the government. And the same way with the Black Panther Party, which it would have been a lot more successful had it had that structure about, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, because there's always been this constant attack.
Oh yeah.
Even during the time of the crack epidemic, and the way they were trying to put people away in prison.
Oh yeah.
And that's primarily what they're doing. And if anybody thinks it's any different, they're wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah. That brings me to something I was listening to just recently. And I was just listening to someone who actually said that 70% of incarcerated males come from single parent homes. But he said that 90%, he said, and they say that they equate that to the fact that the father wasn't present. But he comes back to say also that 90% of the court cases where the child is involved, 90% is awarded to the mother.
Oh yeah.
And he just brought he just brought all these statistics to show that this prison pipeline and how it's funneled and how they funnel it. Because if I can say that if the child is coming from a single parent is destined to be in prison, then whatever court cases I'm going to have, I'm going to make sure that those children is being put in a single parent home. Because this is how I want to continue this cycle of going and this prison pipeline continuing. And it made me think, back to what you were just saying just earlier, that that at all costs, we have to take the strong black male or the black male out of the picture in some type of way, whether it's demasculate him or however we decide to do it, we have to take him out of the picture. And by whatever means that we go about doing it, that's what has to be done. Because if we allowed that person to get that level of independence, then, that's what's hated the most. I can remember, I can't remember one time that I've went out as a family, just me, my children, and my wife just went out. And there's always a comment or a stare or even a smile. And my wife used to sit back and she used to say, "Why are they looking at us like this?" And she gets offended when someone just stares.
Right.
And but then we also receive those, good job or beautiful family.
Right.
And when it's not saw often, that independence not saw often, you get the compliments.
Yeah.
Or when it's perceived as a threat, you get those stares. And so I understand it, and I had to explain to her, you're going to get those stares because people, they don't like seeing this independence.
Yeah, I mean it is one of the as far as the black man, especially the black man who's being a father and doing what he's supposed to, oftentimes is underappreciated, in our society, because I think that's clearly the backbone, of the community, and that's something that we have to focus on and put at the forefront and give them, the appreciation that they deserve. I was looking at a video today where, and I can't think of it. It was the guy was he did a TikTok video, and he dressed up like LL Cool J with a red Kango on. And you know that song where he's like, is it I'm back or something?
I'm
I'm
bad. Yeah.
He was going to pick up his kid at school, and so when he played the song, he gets he picked up his son and his daughter, and he's playing that song, and he's doing the why when he's picking up his kid and taking the backpack and putting it in.
Yeah.
And it was really, because he was hyped up because he was picking his kid up at school.
Correct.
You see what I'm saying?
Correct.
And so, I mean, those are great things, and oftentimes even in the family court when it comes to the, and you're right, when it comes to the black father, often the black father is not, really appreciated, and they oftentimes do whatever they can to again stifle that relationship between the father and the child. And I mean, and again, it just goes back to that whole issue of success. I mean, if they know that, and I don't know whether people do it. I mean, I think sometimes people do it consciously. I think that sometimes people do it subconsciously because, racism is overt, covert, and unintentional. And we all do have, there's biases. And I think that what happens is that because people are so, offended by conversations that may suggest that they are racist or that they are a bigot or that they're offended by that. And sometimes I've even, had people to say that that's even hate speech when you talk about that. But, it's true. And although it may not, it may not affect you may not be the person that's doing it, but what makes you think because you're not doing it, it doesn't happen.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that kills me when people take that position. That's what makes you racist. What makes you racist is when you feel like because it's not that you're not doing it, that all of a sudden then it doesn't happen. You're speaking on something that you really don't know about.
Yeah.
Or you're speaking on it because you're fearful that it may impact what you perceive to be your privilege because you're threatened by it. I mean, why would you're threatened by it? I mean, one way or the other, why does it really matter?
Yeah.
If it's not true, right, it doesn't have any impact. It shouldn't have any impact on you.
Correct.
Because just think about it. You pulled yourself up by your own bootstraps. So why are you worried about it?
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
But if it is true, you see what I'm saying? Why are you worried about it?
Yeah.
Because you pick yourself up by your own bootstraps.
Correct.
So if I come out and we're protesting about police brutality, or we're protesting about black people not being treated equally, or black people not being treated fairly, and you are offended and you got a problem with it, then that tells me that you are racist.
Yeah.
Because now what you think is that if, first of all, if it doesn't exist, it has no impact on you. If racism doesn't exist, if the police aren't beating black people at a record number, if black people are not being discriminated against at record numbers, if black people aren't being in every facet of life, is they're throwing roadblocks in your way as an African American in this country. If those things don't exist, then what are you worried about?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to know what you're worried about. If you say I'm not doing it, okay, well you're not doing it, then why you got a problem with it? But then at the same time, if it's true and you got a problem with it, then that's obvious. So those who have issues with it, whether they see it or whether they don't see it, clearly shows that where they are and they feel threatened, right?
Yeah.
because they're thinking, oh man, what if they change something? What in the world would happen if things were to be a little bit more equal? Or what if things become unequal? What if things become so unequal that it makes it harder for you?
Yeah.
Well, guess what, man? You know, you gotta grind, man.
Yeah.
Right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You guys got to pick it up and just gotta do what you gotta do. If you just happen to not be able, if you lose your job to a black man, if you can't get along because you happen to be not black, if you basically are subjected to different treatment, whether it's in your profession and in your private life, then just suck it up.
Yeah.
Keep your head up. Keep fighting. Right?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that what are you fearful of? Because that's kind of the situation that we have to live in every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that basically you cannot be black and mediocre in America and be successful. I'm going to say that again. You cannot be black and mediocre and be successful in America. You can be somebody else and be mediocre and be successful.
Yes.
But I can assure you, you got a little bit of extra spring to you when
Yeah.
every day, regardless of the situation, they're gonna throw something extra at you. Being black in America is, if you play, let me give you the analogy. If you play sports before, when I used to play football, I had a coach that used to tell me that when you play on the road, like you have a schedule, let's say you have a 12-game schedule. Usually you play, or 10-game schedule, depending on the school, but high school is probably 8 to 10 games. Half of the games are on the road, and half of the games are at home in your own stadium. And he used to say, when you play on the road, you have to blow them out. You cannot keep it close.
Correct.
Because if you put it in the hands of the officials, you're gonna lose. You know what I mean? So you can't have that call.
Yeah.
Because if you get that call when you play on the road, it's usually going to go against you.
Yeah.
Because it's their stadium, it's their field, it's their locker room, it's their fan, it's their officials, right?
Correct.
But at home, just keep it close, right? Because it's your locker room, it's your stadium, it's your fans, it's your officials. Being black in America is like playing an entire season of away games. You can't keep it close.
Wow.
You can't put it in the hands of the officials. You always have to blow them out. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's deep.
And that's the best way to explain it. Is that the difference is that you have a whole schedule every season of away games. You have no home games.
Wow.
You got to be on the road. You don't get no extra sleep. You see what I'm saying? It ain't like you can wake up from your house and go to the stadium. You got to get on a bus or a plane and fly out of town and play out of town at somebody else's stadium. Usually your fans aren't there.
Correct.
Because they're out of town. You see what I'm saying? That's what it's like.
That's deep.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and that's the way you have to get down. You still got to practice.
Yeah.
You still got to suit it up. You still got to go in there into the stadium, and you still got to play that game. Every game. But you got to do it. But every game is out of town. And they got the advantage because it's their stadium. They're loud. You know how people used to say, man, I used to hate playing. You know, you hear these basketball players. I hate playing in, the Boston Gardens. They were so loud. Those fans, they were miserable. You see how those fans, they nasty to you too, aren't they?
Yeah.
They throw stuff at you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They mean to you. But you still got to play.
Still got to play.
And that's what it's like.
Mm.
They don't want you to win. The fans don't want you to win. The officials don't want you to win. Obviously, the team you're playing against don't want you to win. But you're in the game, and you got to fight and win, no matter, even though you're in somebody else's stadium.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's the mindset that you have to have. You can't keep it close. You got to blow them out all the time.
Wow.
All blowouts. You know what I mean? And that's how you got to get down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know. So that's how we have to have it. What time is it? We ain't close, are we? Oh, we got 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
So you got. Well, you wanna give me a minute?
Man, I'm just, that was deep what you said, man, because I think that put a lot of things in perspective, not for just me, but I think people in general needed to hear the way you put that, because I think that when we are out and about and we are, in this game of life, we don't look at it like that. And the matter of fact that if we get that ingrained in us, I think that'll make us a lot more successful, regardless of how they see us, how people see us. But if we take that analogy that you just gave us right now and we utilize that in our everyday life, that'll make us great,
Right.
I mean, of course, like you say, you're going to have those just going to, every day it's like that.
Yeah.
You get, people throw stuff at you, people scream at you, yell at you, make you feel uncomfortable,
Right.
But even in all of that uncomfortable state, you have to excel and you have to push through, because, that's just how it is.
That's how it is. It's just like in the wintertime in the locker rooms when you play away, they purposely cut off the heat so you'll be extra cold.
Wow.
Or if it's summertime and you're in the locker room, they'll cut the air conditioner off. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They mess with you like that because you're out of town.
Exactly.
Even when you order food, they said that they poisoned Michael Jordan. He think he got poisoned intentionally one time in an away game. He ordered some
Oh
pizza.
my God.
Yeah, they think that they sent some some pizza that messed him up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're away.
You're away.
You're playing that away game.
Wow.
I think we got a minute. We got a minute left, Joe. What you say, Rosa?
This just speaks volumes to me. It shows what's the difference between a victim and a victor. A victim just stays there and lingers on the fact that the odds are stacked against them and stays there. But a victor knows that the odds are stacked against them, and so what? You keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Or on board KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA